Hello and welcome to the Dear Old State Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. My name is Nolan Collery and I'm joined alongside Ethan Ellis. Through the early weeks of the year, Penn State student athletes have already been busy on their respective fields.
That's right, Nolan, and our beat reporters have been busy at the fields as well, covering Penn State sports, which are off to a great start in the fall season. 5 varsity sports are currently ranked within their own respective top 15 polls, making Happy Valley a hotbed of success. One of the teams showing early season success is the Penn State football team, which improved to 4-0 on Saturday. Reporting on Saturday's game and the early college football season are Amanda Vogt and Justin Ciavolella.
Well, thanks, Ethan. Penn State football hosted its annual whiteout game on Saturday night, and the Nittany Lions defeated the then number 24 ranked Iowa Hawkeyes 31-0 in front of the second largest crowd in Beaver Stadium history. That win moved the blue and white to 4-0 and number 6 in this week's AP poll. I'm Justin Ciavolella here with Amanda Vogt. And Amanda, Penn State's offense got off to a slow start like they have really all season in every game except for Delaware, but they turned it on in that second half. They got their tight ends involved. Drew Aller looked a little bit more comfortable in the pocket. What did you see from that offense?
Yeah, so early on in the game, they had some field positions really close in their territory, which made it hard to kind of extend the field and played a little bit more conservatively. Iowa pressed up front a lot, which made it really hard to kind of see Drew Aller work through his progressions. But as the game went on and the special teams and the defenses gave the offense more possessions, you saw Drew Aller get more comfortable and find his targets downfield. And this offense is multi-dimensional. Drew Aller finished 25 for 37, 166 yards, and a career-high 4 passing touchdowns. And the running backs and Nicholas Singleton and Kate Charnell and the tight end group and the wide receiver unit has made this team very hard to defend because you don't know where you need to attack, because if you go after one, the other two can still shine. And there's been a lot of questions as to how each position group will fit into this offensive scheme. And with the wide receiver 3 position not really been set in stone, you've seen Malik McLean fill that, Dante Cephas fill that, and Liam Clifford. And with Keandre Lambert-Smith in wide receiver 1 typically, and Harrison Wallace in wide receiver 2, that's kind of been a lot of questions as to who's going to have that 3rd spot and who's going to be the true wide receiver that Drew Aller is going to have that big chemistry with. We've seen some glimpses with Keandre Lambert-Smith, but nothing too definite as for those other 2 spots. And the tight ends also saw some criticism for their lack of receptions in the first couple of games, but the tight ends showed out against Iowa and were responsible for 3 of the 4 touchdowns that Aller threw.
And Khalil Dinkins had the first touchdown from the tight end group. Tyler Warren had the next 2. Now, Penn State is still lacking that big play ability so far. In fact, James Franklin said after the game that they still haven't won the explosive play battle in any game they've played this season. That included Iowa. However, they were able to wear down that Iowa defense, and it was something that Iowa hasn't seen in years, something Penn State hasn't seen in years when these two teams go at it. 14 of their previous 31 matchups between Penn State and Iowa had finished in 1-possession games. This ended in a 31-0 blowout, and we talk about the 31 points from the offense. Go to that 0 on the defense. What has Manny Diaz's defense been doing so right, especially the last 2 weeks, where they have 9 takeaways in the last 2 games? Of course, against Illinois, they had 5, and here against Iowa, they had 4.
Well, Manny Diaz's defense has handed Iowa its first shutout since 2000 and recorded Penn State's first shutout against a top 25 opponent for the first time since the 1999 Alamo Bowl. And they've just been working as a group that's dependent on continuity, which is what Manny Diaz and head coach James Franklin stresses for this group. Not worrying about the individual stats, because team success promotes individual accolades and gets you those defensive player recognitions and those offensive player recognitions once you hand your offense back the ball. And if you look at it, of these 11 turnovers throughout the season, 6 have been fumbles and 5 have been interceptions, and it's a credit as to how the defensive line works with the cornerbacks and the safeties, and how if everyone's doing their job, it doesn't matter who gets it done. It's just the fact that the team is doing their part once they step out onto the field.
And you talk about the defensive line, the linebackers opening things up for the safeties. Safety Jalen Reed was the one who forced the first fumble. And then we'll go back to something else you said, which is that the stats don't matter, the individual stats. Penn State, they said early on in this season that the only stat they care about leading the nation is is in wins. And so far, they are 4-0. They've gotten every win they possibly could have thus far, and the defense has been a big point. And we go back to the individual stats. Earlier in the week, James Franklin was asked about Adisa Isaac and Chop Robinson not really having the stats to back up their preseason hype. Well, they showed out against Iowa. Chop Robinson with a strip sack. Adisa Isaac had a sack of his own and picked up the fumble that was forced by Chop Robinson late in that game. So they got rewarded for all that hard work that they've been putting in this season, even though they hadn't been getting the individual stats up to that point. So now we switch from Iowa, who was ranked number 24 coming into that game. They have fallen out of the AP poll, to a team that has been struggling in their own right. Now, they did pick up a win against Minnesota this past week, but that is the Northwestern Wildcats. There's been turmoil all over their program this offseason, and it has bled onto the field. The talent not really there where it needs to be. They still have some good highlight players that Penn State will have to game plan well for. But Penn State, they're going on the road. It should be not necessarily a harsh environment for them either. The only thing that could get to them is an 11 a.m. start Eastern Standard Time because they are in Central. But when you look at it, Penn State, it should be all around a pretty good matchup for them.
Yeah, I agree. Northwestern is 2-2. They're coming off an emotional overtime victory against Minnesota after being down 21 points. And so that having Penn State come, Penn State's ranked number 6 now. Obviously, Northwestern is going to have to pick their poison of what they want to kind of prohibit on Penn State's offense, and that's going to be tough. But what I think that everybody wants to see from Penn State is what we talked about before, more explosive plays. We haven't really seen one since the 72-yard touchdown catch by Keandre Lambert-Smith in the first possession that Penn State had this season against West Virginia. And so winning the explosive play battle, continuing to win the turnover battle are the things that head coach James Franklin focuses on when he speaks to the media after every game, every weekly media press conference, and every day after practice that the media gets to speak with him. And so if you continue to do that, if you continue to put up quality wins, you stay undefeated going into the bye week as tougher opponents in Ohio State and Michigan loom. And you see Michigan is ranked 2 in the AP Top 25, and Ohio State now 4 after beating number 9 Notre Dame. They now fell down a couple spots. But you have to keep racking up these quality wins. You didn't expect to shut out a ranked opponent, but now are you going to give up points to a team that is unranked this week on the road? It might be a bit of a factor that it might not be the harsh environment, but it's still a Big Ten away stadium that Drew Aller will have to prove that he can navigate this offense from the get-go and not necessarily coming out of a break or a defensive turnover.
Aller struggled in that game on the road against Illinois. He's going to another harsh environment, and I'll correct myself from something I said earlier. It's a noon Eastern Standard Time kickoff. It's 11 a.m. Central Time, and Penn State will obviously be on the road in Evanston, Illinois, to face the Northwestern Wildcats, and we'll have to see how that one plays out. But Penn State, they're looking real good so far to start and living up to that preseason hype, maybe even surpassing it a bit. Now back to you, Ethan.
Thanks, Justin. Nolan, Justin and Amanda talked about how Penn State shut out Iowa this past weekend and how Iowa hasn't been shut out since 2000. So what did you see in that defense that helped them achieve that?
You know, I'll tell you what, the big storyline going into the weekend's game was all about the weather. A lot of rain was expected. It wasn't as bad as everyone thought. However, I think the defense from Penn State made the rain its ally. They played well in the trenches. They attacked the quarterback early and often, which led to a lot of throws he wasn't comfortable making, led to a lot of missed reads. I really do think that the rain helped Penn State the entire game. We now take you from football to football, where beat reporters Michael Landis, Josh Gabriel, and Cailey Thalman have been busy covering both the men's and women's seasons.
Nolan, Penn State men's soccer has gotten off to a spectacular start this season, going 5-1-2 so far and going 2-0 in the conference. The star of the show for the Nittany Lions has been goalkeeper Chris Shakes. Shakes has been named Big Ten Defensive Player of the Week twice so far this season, along with NCAA Player of the Week. Shakes has also allowed just 5 goals in 8 games and has posted 34 saves this year. On the note of goalkeeping, for the past 11 years, Penn State men's soccer has honored Penn State's biggest goalkeeping fan, Mac Brady, on the Big Ten home opener. This year, Penn State took on Maryland in the match. Let's see how that went.
Penn State men's soccer opened up Big Ten play this year with a 1-0 victory. The Nittany Lions posted a strong defensive performance against a Maryland team that has struggled this season. A perfect back line and goalkeeping performance was especially special given the significance of the night. Tonight, Penn State men's soccer is celebrating the 11th annual Mac Brady match. Mac was Penn State's biggest soccer fan and had dreams of becoming a goalkeeper for Penn State one day. Unfortunately, Mac passed away 11 years ago due to an unexpected blood infection. Every year, Penn State men's soccer honors his legacy in the Big Ten home opener. Goalkeeper Chris Shakes had 5 saves on the night, resulting in his 4th shutout of the season. Shakes said it was vital to play as well as he did on the night honoring Mac Brady.
Yeah, I mean, that's what we really played for tonight is Mac, and his family's here to come support us every single year, and so we're so grateful for them, and we just want to give back. And, you know, Mac must have been here on the field with us, gave us a little bit of luck, and kept us a clean sheet, you know, so it's so important to us, and we just got to keep pushing, you know.
Peter Mangione scored the lone goal of the night to propel the Nittany Lions forward to a 4-1-2 record this season. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Cailey Thalman.
Now let's head over to Michael Landis and Josh Gabriel to hear their take on Penn State soccer's start to the season on both the men's and women's side.
Thanks, Cailey. And, you know, this team has looked very solid to start the season. They started off, as Cailey was saying, 5-1-2. They've looked great so far. Really only one game that they kind of struggled in against Penn, where they let up 3 second-half goals. But besides that, they've scored 14 goals on the season and only allowed 5. Their 2 top goal scorers, Liam Butts and Peter Mangione, have 3 each on the season. And other than that, this team has looked great. I mean, I think for them, the goal is to keep progressing. Obviously, they've looked great defensively besides that one game. But for the Nittany Lions, keep moving forward. Their last 3 games, they've had 3 shutouts in a row. If they can keep this going, I think this men's team is going to have a great season and could be competing for another Big Ten championship soon.
That's right, Mike. It looks like they're finally settling into their season after that 3-0 loss to Penn a couple weeks ago. Chris Shakes has been phenomenal in goal, like you said. Those 3 shutouts in a row for him in that defense, and the offense is finally starting to show its life. But the offense needs to get more goals in the back of the net because Shakes in that defense can't put up a shutout every game.
Yeah, I agree, Josh. And I'm going to swing it over here to the women's soccer team, where they're off to a fantastic start. 9-0-1 to start the season. 3-0 in conference play. They have scored 26 goals to start the season and only allowed 3. Starting goalie Catherine Asman has only allowed 2 goals to start this season, and the defense has looked absolutely stellar. And, you know, Josh has been really impressed with that entire defensive line, specifically Kate Wiesner and Ava Alonso, 2 staples back there, protecting the goalie, not allowing too many shots. And we saw it yesterday in the game that we went to against Nebraska. It was cold, out in the rain. It was a gritty game. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like you said, we were there yesterday at Jeff, and it was a tough, hard-nosed game, battled on both sides of the ball for both teams. Both keepers really stood out. But for me, the play in between the net for Catherine Asman, Penn State starting goalkeeper, it was just phenomenal. I mean, she single-handedly kept them in that game at the end with 5 saves. And if that doesn't happen, the Nittany Lions lose their first game of the year. But Corey Dyke getting that indirect free kick in the 81st minute finally broke the scoreless tie. And I think that going forward, they're definitely going to need some more help on offense because Asman can't do it all by herself, but they definitely have something cooking and they'll continue in Big Ten play. Let's take a look at those highlights.
The weather conditions were brutal on Sunday. It was cold, windy, and rainy for Penn State's matchup against Nebraska. Neither team managed to put together many offensive opportunities as the field was very slippery and created problems for ball control. Things started to get a little chippy as frustrations began to build up between the players and coaches. It was an extremely defensive matchup as both goalies made some incredible saves to keep the game tied for almost all regulation. It was starting to look like the game would end up in a draw until things started to heat up late in the second half for the Nittany Lions. In the 81st minute of the game, Penn State got a great opportunity with an indirect free kick just outside the 18. Corey Dyke made sure to make the most of it as she absolutely buried it in the top right corner, giving the Nittany Lions a 1-0 lead that would prove to be the game winner. In a game that gave absolutely horrid conditions, the blue and white managed to pull through and pick up another conference game win. Penn State looks to continue their dominant season as they take on another Big Ten rival, Michigan, in Ann Arbor on September 28th. Both the men's and women's teams will look to continue their pushes towards another Big Ten champion trophy and more. Now back to you, Nolan.
Thanks, guys. So, Ethan, men's or women's, give me an impact player who you've really seen stand out for Penn State soccer.
Well, I'm looking at the women's team right now, and I look no further than Corey Dyke. I mean, she has been clutch this season, has really been propelling Penn State to the record that they have, scored the winning goal in the 81st minute last game for Penn State. So she's really just been such an impact player, and Penn State's really lucky to have her. What about you?
I'll stick with the men, actually, and we're going to go to Chris Shakes. He's been about as good as you can ask from any goaltender. Penn State received some votes for the top 25 this past week. If the defense and Shakes continue to play like this, I see no reason why they won't be ranked soon.
The Penn State women's volleyball team has started off their year hot. Beat reporters Allie, Wenskoski and Jackson Tortone have been in rec hall with the team all season long.
Thanks, guys. The Nittany Lions have been killing it on the court, figuratively and literally. Penn State women's volleyball started the season almost a month ago, already ranked 8th in the country. Since then, they've battled tough opponents, including 4 ranked opponents, and made a name for themselves. Highlighted by Jess Music and Cameron Hanna, the team already has 2 players that have reached their 1,000th career point this season, with Hanna achieving the accomplishment just 2 Fridays ago. Now, Jackson, we were at 2 of these matches this season so far, the home opener in Big Ten play and the Penn State Classic. And we'll start there with the Penn State Classic. Penn State took on UMBC and they took on Seton Hall, and they won both of them. But they did give up 1 set to Seton Hall, dropping the first one ever to that school. So what did Coach Schumacher-Cailey have to say to the team afterwards?
Well, the coach was disappointed in, obviously, them giving up a set in the first place. I mean, they're an unranked team, Seton Hall, and losing a set in volleyball in D1 like that to an unranked team is always a loss, honestly. And so the main problem that she saw was the blocking. So Penn State has a top blocking unit in the country, 5th actually, with an average of 2.97 per set. And so the problem was they only had 14 assisted blocks and 4 solo blocks throughout 4 sets, which is not horrendous, but also not good. And I think that Schumacher-Cailey definitely thinks that they can improve from that, especially against a weak offense like Seton Hall, and that was their main issue.
I agree with that, especially having that low amount of blocks, but they seem to have cleaned it up a little bit when they had their next match on last Wednesday against Rutgers. It was their first match in Big Ten play, and it was a home opener, and they did really well. They swept them 3-0, and they seem to have no problems on the offense or the defense. So what went right for them in that match?
So the main thing was the offense. The team hit 390. Jess Music recorded 18 kills. It was a very good night for the offense. Gillian Grimes at Libero recorded 12 digs. It was a solid defensive performance as well as a solid offensive performance. And yeah, Rutgers never got above 20 points in any of the sets, and it was a complete sweep. So Penn State performed overall very well. The blocking game was improved. But yes, I would say the main thing that gave them that win was the offense as well as the solid performance from the libero spot.
I completely agree. And Jess Music was one of the highlights of that match, as she usually is. She's one of those bigger names you hear every single time. She had 10 digs on the night, and she also, for the second time just today, it was announced that she is Big Ten Player of the Week. So good for her, but they are on the road for quite some time now moving forward. They have 3 straight matches on the road. They just completed one this weekend against Northwestern, sweeping them 3-0. And then they have back-to-back matches. So Friday they go to Illinois at a 9 p.m. late night match, and then on Saturday they have to go to Minnesota for once again a 9 p.m. late night match. So what has to go right in these next 2 matches, or what has gone right with Northwestern as they move forward and try to come back to Penn State for Alumni Weekend on October 6th and 7th?
So Northwestern, again, not a tough team. They were able to get the win in 3 sets, no problem really. And as far as Illinois goes, it needs to be a similar story. It needs to be a 3-set not shutout, but a 3-set quick game. Not a lot of scoring for Illinois. They need to prove that they are, a top team in the country and need to dominate an unranked team like that. Now, Minnesota is going to be a little bit tougher because Minnesota is actually ranked better than Penn State. They're ranked at 12th. Penn State's ranked at 15th. So the Minnesota offense actually isn't as good as Penn State, honestly. Penn State's hitting around 262. Minnesota's hitting around 235. And also, they have less kills than Penn State with only 487 compared to Penn State's 513. So I do think Penn State will have an advantage in that just because of the offensive prowess that they have. But the defense needs to step up as well as the offense in order to take on Minnesota, because Minnesota is a historically great volleyball team. They're a great program. They've made a lot of great players, and they're going to battle. So if they win that in 4 sets, that's a win. but they need to sweep Illinois. And then if they do that, they'll have a good weekend coming back.
I agree with that. I think that Minnesota is one of the tougher teams that they have faced so far this season. I mean, we did see them face Louisville early in the season at number 2 at that time, but they were swept, like you said. Big loss there, so they have to come out with some fire against Minnesota.
Absolutely.
The team is currently ranked number 15th in the country as they continue their away trip. With facing more and more Big Ten teams, we will just have to wait and see how Penn State fares with fiercer competition. Back to you guys at the desk.
Thanks, Allie. Nolan, this women's volleyball team has been off to a really hot start this season, but one of the biggest aspects I feel like of Rec Hall is that crowd, and especially that student section. How much do you think that's helped the team this season?
You know what, Ethan, for my money's worth, Rec Hall for women's volleyball is the most underrated atmosphere in all of Penn State sports. The student section is absolutely electric, and they really do give a boost to the women's team. Our last sport of the night takes us to the ice, where the Penn State women's ice hockey team looks to pick up right where they left off after an extremely successful season last year, in which they won the CHA regular season championship. And the tournament beat reporters Anthony Desher and Josh Bartosik are here to preview the ladies' season.
Thanks, Nolan. After a strong 2022-23 campaign, the Penn State women's hockey team is looking to build off a successful season where the team won its first CHA championship. After a triple overtime loss to Quinnipiac, though, in the NCAA tournament, it was time to hit the reset button and climb the mountain again. Let's kick things off by talking about the off-season changes the Nittany Lions faced. Josh?
Yeah, well, I mean, let's start with the fact that they lost a lot of people to graduation. Izzy Heminger was a big one. Courtney Correa as well was another one. Mallory Uline, another one. Renee Gangarosa, a bunch of those on the back end. But the two big ones are obviously Kiara Zanin, who transferred to Ohio State, and Olivia Walline, who transferred to the University of Minnesota Duluth. While Zanin led the team in points last year, led the team in points the year prior, one of the biggest pieces, a huge loss. But Walline's another underrated one that people don't talk about. Was 4th on the team in points last season. Every time that we mentioned someone on this Penn State team that really stepped it up in a weekend series in CHA play, Walline's name was always in the conversation. She's going to be very, very missed. They bring in a nice amount of transfers. Maggie McEachran, who just got CHA Defensive Player of the Week in their series against Northeastern that we'll get into in a bit. She's a transfer from Colgate All-Star Connor McEachran's sister, who used to play for Penn State. They also bring in Brianna Brooks from New Hampshire and Alva Johnson from LIU. Two names that are going to be pretty solid. But the big one to talk about is the freshman coming in on the back end, Carolina Hengelmuller, a mouthful, from Austria. Very, very solid. Has been in the Austrian national team the last 3 years. Won a gold medal on the U18 team. Has already looked really solid in the first 2 games that we've seen. The defensive awareness isn't quite there yet, but she is just a freshman. But she has just as much hype coming in as Tessa Janicki did. So a lot of really great all-around pieces for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, I mean, all schools go through this. They lose players, but they also bring some in. And when you have a team like the Nittany Lions who have, seen recent success, those kind of teams, they tend to bring in good talent. And it's just all up to the locker room and the culture that Penn State has to, get these fresh troops and, rally them again and, look to make another run. But they did play a game this weekend. Over the weekend, Penn State traveled up to Northeastern to battle the 5th-ranked Huskies. It was a defensive battle all series long, and the final result ended in a split. Josh, what are your takeaways from the first contests of the season?
I mean, look, a split is honestly probably one of the best case scenarios for the Nittany Lions besides getting the sweep. This is a very, very good Northeastern team. They did the same thing that they did last year where they played a very tough Wisconsin team last year to start the season. They split that series as well. That one was at home. But Northeastern has made the Frozen Four in back-to-back-to-back seasons. They have that postseason experience that the Nittany Lions haven't necessarily gotten yet. They just got their first taste of it last season, as you mentioned, that triple OT loss to Quinnipiac. A defensive battle, like you mentioned, both goaltenders, Josie Balthin and Gwenna Phillips, were fantastic in game one. It only took 1 goal by the Huskies to win that one in the first period. Game 2, they scored a first-period goal as well, but the Nittany Lions, 2 big goals in the third period by Alyssa Machado and Leah Stecker, really opened that game up and allowed them to steal the win. Josie Balthin, again, very solid in net. 29 saves on the day, and that one has just been very consistent really her entire Penn State career. Only 2 things that really stood out that could be concerns down the road for the Nittany Lions was the quantity over quality of shots. Penn State had over 60 shots, just 2 goals in that series, but it didn't end up resulting in a split. It's a very good Northeastern team. And the discipline, 8 penalties and 6 in that first game. Not exactly what you want from a team that's supposed to be one of the top in the nation. It is still early, so just a few kinks to probably work out, but definitely something to look forward to down the road.
Yeah, as you mentioned, it is still early and things can iron out. And Northeastern is a very good hockey team. That's why they're ranked 5th. But the Nittany Lions are also a very good hockey team. That's why they're also ranked. Good teams find ways to win, and it's going to come down to those defensive battles in the playoffs, like we saw with the triple overtime. That was just defense back and forth. That's why it went to triple overtime, because it lasted so long. But when you have a team that knows how to, overcome adversity and, get past the defensive woes and, create just a little bit of offense, sometimes it's just good enough for the win. But now looking forward, expectations are high for the Nittany Lions. Looking at the rest of the schedule, Penn State will play with a target on its back as the reigning CHA champions. Reaching the top of the mountain is never easy. So what do you expect out of the Nittany Lions this year?
Well, they reached the mountain last year, like you said. There's nothing stopping them from reaching the mountain again this year. Anything less than a back-to-back CHA championship is probably a bad scenario for this Nittany Lions team. Yes, they're a lot younger than they were last year. They lost some key pieces, but they have just as much talent, if not more. Bringing in a bunch of transfers. Maggie McEachern, who we already mentioned, again, CHA Defensive Player of the Week in her first series with the Nittany Lions in the blue and white. Fantastic. Caroline Hagen-Mueller, is going to continue to get better and better. They're younger, but because they're doing what they did last year, which is stacking that non-conference schedule, you got teams like Northeastern, Colgate, Cornell, Yale down the road, Robert Morris as well, which is a team that's going to join the CHA next season. A little preview taste of that down the road. But stacking your non-conference slate with tough opponents makes the team better. And Jeff Cambersall mentioned that last year after the non-conference schedule, and it was brought up again, or it's been brought up again because they're doing it again in the non-conference schedule, playing very tough teams. So I think it'll make the team better for conference play. And again, anything less than a CHA championship, again, and another NCAA tournament appearance, is probably a loss of a season for the Nittany Lions.
Yeah, and I think it is good that they played Northeastern so early, too, because they can work out those kinks that, if that's a really good team, you'll probably see them in the NCAA tournament if you do make it there again. But, with the target on their back now, it's time for, everyone to just, group up again. This is what they do. Teams that are consistently good will have long seasons, but they need to regroup and be able to do the same thing again. And Penn State, like I said earlier, has that culture to, come together and make runs. That's why they've been so good last year, and that's why things this year with expectations are also on the good side. That's why fans want another championship. This team has the talent to do so. This team will be hungry. They came up short in the NCAA tournament. They want more. But with faces new and old, the grind for a title has only just begun. The skates have been laced and the sticks have been taped. I hope you're ready for another exciting season of college hockey. I know we are. I'm Anthony Desher with Josh Bartosik. Nolan and Ethan, back to you.
Thanks, guys. So headed into that slate, Northeastern ranked number 5 in the nation with one of the best offenses on ice. How do you stop that?
Well, one person I'm looking at is Maggie McEachern, the Defensive Player of the Week. She really just got in there and blocked all the lanes, blocked shots, and was really a huge boost for that Penn State defense. And now it's time to look at our top plays from the early weeks of the season.
Women's volleyball going up against Rutgers. A solid service return from the Scarlet Knights, but get rejected by Taylor Trammell on her way to a 5-block game.
Women's soccer drew up a beauty of a set piece to set Corey Dyke up with a game winner against the Nebraska Cornhuskers in the 81st minute of the match.
Women's field hockey, 7:50 left in the game against Syracuse. Sophia Glado makes light work of the Great Wall of Green right in front of her and puts the shot in the back of the cage, tying the game at 1 apiece.
Back to women's volleyball, the Nittany Lions take on the UMBC serve with ease, setting up Cameron Hanna with the monster kill, which marks number 1,000 in her career.
In the second quarter of Penn State football's whiteout game, quarterback Drew Aller finds tight end Khalil Dinkins for the score. This would be the first of Aller's 4 touchdown passes in a game the Nittany Lions would win 31-0 over the Hawkeyes.
Let me tell you, Ethan, if those are the top plays from just a few short weeks, I am so excited to see what the rest of the year has in store. That's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for tuning into this edition of the Dear Old State Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. If you like this and want to stay caught up on all things Penn State sports this year, be sure to follow us on all our social media platforms.
For Nolan, Collery, and the entire team here at Penn State Sports Night, I'm Ethan Ellis. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, we are.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night.
For more content like this, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a like,
and follow our socials down below.
And as always, we are
Penn State Sports Night.